Good day and welcome. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline today on October 12th, 2025. I'm joined by some of the regular crew here, former Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford.
That would be me. How are you doing today?
I just ate a Schweinhaxe. I can hardly move.
I knew you did. That's why I asked.
I have to unbutton myself here. Oh. And Western Standard senior Alberta columnist Cory Morgan.
Less bloated today and sitting on the end, yes.
Very good. Well, I guess speaking of not kosher,
is it? Yes, yeah.
About unkosher as you get. We're introducing today for the first time on The Pipeline, although he's on your show earlier today, Cory, our new Western Standard Parliament Hill correspondent, Will Barclay. Welcome, William.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Happy to be here.
Well, let's see how you do. We're gonna get into some serious shit. All right. Well, a lot of media are talking about Pierre Poilievre's upcoming leadership review. I don't think even legacy media people are expecting he's gonna have a particularly hard run. They can tell it. They're trying to gin something up about controversy. I don't think there's too much. But, who really wants this guy gone? He's going to pass pretty solidly. But there's been some tripping here and there. Is it all just media? Or is there something to it? We're going to talk about it. Hilarious story. Coming right after Remembrance Day. The Liberals' plan for increasing the sextupling of the Canadian Reserve Forces apparently is going to rely very strongly on making weekend warriors out of unionized federal bureaucrats. So, you can go to your Cup W union meeting, sharing your pronouns Monday to Friday, and on the weekend, you go out and they're going to put you in a green jacket and hand you a gun, and you can file a human rights complaint for having your dignity down. I don't know. But yeah, they're going to make an army out of bureaucrats. We're going to talk about the crazy plan here to have 300,000 reservists. Like, it's never, ever going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
Yeah. And we'll kind of get into some of the overall dilapidated state of the military. I had, if I might toot my own horn a bit, I think I had a very fun column over the weekend. Spoiler, we have 2 generals for every tank. Every tank, we've got 2 generals in Canada. One can drive, one can man the gun. Our command structure is that efficient in Canada. The general's orders are obeyed immediately because the only one to obey his orders are himself. So, that's the state of the Canadian military. Adjacent to that, though, we're going to begin with, we're a day past Remembrance Day here. Normally, I grew up in military towns. So for me, this was always a very big deal. I was a cadet, so I was always in parades for it. I'd have the school assembly part, day before or something, and then Remembrance Day, I'd go out and do the parades and do the whole thing. And in military towns, it was always a very big, very solemn thing, very big deal for me. But there's been some controversy around this one. Remembrance Day is normally not a particularly controversial day. Some people have at times accused it of glorifying war. I have found it generally does not. It's about honoring the sacrifice of those who have served, if you agreed with the wars or not. And that can go for either the World Wars, Korea, or more controversial wars afterwards, like Afghanistan, that did not necessarily have unanimous support. Wasn't about the wars, wasn't about glorifying war or even militarism. It's about honoring those who have served and died. But like everything is political now. And we've now got some controversy around Remembrance Day. We're finally there. I guess there was the white puppy thing. Whatever. But, now we got a bit more. So, the University of Calgary has got this kind of famous big rock. And people can paint whatever. People paint the rock. There's probably 30,000 layers of paint on this thing at this point. Very often it's the political clubs, the conservatives paint blue and the liberals go over the weekend, paint red, and then Democrats come paint it orange. You can put things on it, or it could be different causes. For roughly the last year or so, it's been painted and the colors of the Palestinian flag. You got various Palestinian things on it. Okay, cool. But it's been there for like a year. as far as I know, it's rarely retains its paint on it for a week or more. This thing has been the colors of this for a year. Now, the campus conservative club, the University of Calgary, has gone and painted it as a Canadian flag on Remembrance Day. They painted a Canadian flag. I mean, being a bit more appropriate, probably should have been done as a red ensign, the flag that most people fought on.
Harder to paint.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you could make it all red, just put a shield, but yeah, it's not as neat to paint. So whatever, they painted a Canadian flag. And Alberta Premier Danielle Smith kind of shared the tweet and said, like, hey, great on our Conservatives doing this. And then you had the likes of Thomas Lukaszuk saying, this is anti-Palestinian racism. I mean, the guy says a lot of dumb shit. He says a lot of dumb shit. But it actually took me a while. I don't understand. I actually didn't get what he's getting at. So when someone inevitably paints over the Canadian flag, if they haven't already, is that going to be anti-Canadian racism? I don't know. It's it was just mind-numbing. And you saw all the usual characters saying this is racist. First of all, Palestine is not a race. It's some argue it's a nation. Maybe. But yeah, arguably maybe it's a nation. Maybe. But it's not a race.
Mr. Carney thinks it's a nation.
I think nationhood can be developed or undeveloped in time. Nations fall and rise, and it's an organic thing. So I arguably think, maybe it constitutes a nation, but it certainly does not constitute a race. We know it does not constitute a race. And then at the same time, we've got some stories up on this during Remembrance Day ceremonies. In particular, the one that's been gotten the most play here was in Toronto. I guess at Old City Hall, there's a cenotaph, and they called up some poor cadets. They put these poor cadets up to do it. I think they were maybe air cadets or air cadet and army cadet. So kids, like teenagers. And they had one read a land acknowledgement, and the other one do an ancestry, I don't know what they call it, ancestral acknowledgement or something, whereas essentially, we apologize for being white and that there was ever slavery in Canada. Technically, there was never slavery in the modern state of Canada. Long pre-Confederation, there was technically slavery. But Canada actually was one of the first places on the planet, even predating the British Empire, which predates America, which predates most of the rest of the world in getting rid of slavery. Canada was the first part of the British Empire to outlaw slavery. But we have to have these acknowledgements just about how sinful Canada is, born in sin, that it ever had slavery. Yeah. I'm not going to say, of course slavery is bad. We know it. You don't have to say that crap. We just know that. It's self-evident. But we've now drenched Remembrance Day in ritual shame and self-loathing. I can't imagine there's many veterans, present or past, would imagine this is the kind of Canada they fought for, and this is the kind of recognition they would get for their service and sacrifice.
I don't think they would have been. One of the remarkable things about Canada is the number of people who actually put on uniform. In 1939, this was just a country of about 11 million people. 900,000 men and women put on uniform. 900,000 out of a population of 11 million, and they were not fighting for anything but freedom and an end to fascism. And what we're looking at now with this kind of thing that you've just described so eloquently, Derek, is a new kind of fascism, except that this time it's directed at people like us by the kind of people who benefited most from Canada's war effort. It's a shame, it's a disgrace, and we'll probably see more of it before we see less of it. The only reason I even raise the possibility of seeing less of it is that, if you've noticed, the shibboleths are starting to fall. We have Bill Gates coming out and saying, well, maybe global warming isn't the most important thing in the world. And some of the government officers backing off on the indigenous claims that seem to require the most proof. I think in the end, and as for trans, people are starting to, yeah, maybe not so much. I think these things come and they're used politically to embarrass the conservative side, or the attempt to, but this too will pass. Meanwhile, there's a shocking and sad development.
I'm not sure how far to take this sentiment, but I don't know, Corey, if you saw it. There was it was on the Good Morning Britain, or it was a British news show, and they had this very, very old veteran on. I mean, there's not a lot of Second World War veterans left, but they had this veteran on. Do you know the clip I'm talking about?
No, I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, so I don't want to. Okay, you haven't seen it. I don't want to get too far out, but he more or less said,
It wasn't worth
I don't want
it.
to put words in the man's mouth, but William, you saw this?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said it wasn't worth it.
Oh, okay.
I'll
I don't want to put words in this man's mouth, but I mean, he was very old. He had some difficulty articulating himself, but I think it was fair to say, more or less, I don't think I would have fought if this is the country I knew we were going to get at the end. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have taken up arms. I don't know. Am I reading too much into that?
No,
Or do you think that's a
absolutely
fair
not.
summation of what this guy
I
said?
don't think so. I think what we're seeing with regards to kind of the rock in Canada, at least, is the erasure in real time of Canada's national identity, what it means to be Canadian, Canada's foundational values and ideology, and specifically in order to make space for alternative ideologies and diverse cultures, and again, at the expense of Canada's own national identity.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of this was a British veteran. It wasn't Canadian, but obviously very akin. There's a funny / terribly sad AI video made, and it was I guess Operation Sea Lion 1940. These German soldiers, and one guy bursts into the headquarters and says, "I know how we're going to invade Britain," and then just shows them on blow up rubber dinghies going across the channel, and they're like, "It's amazing! They just let us right in." It made the point in a very dark but kind of funny way about what's happened, and that's just Britain. But Britain is just kind of a symbol of what's happened to all of us here. But now we take even Remembrance Days and drench them, Corey, in this ritualistic self-hatred, self-loathing that might go fine at a federal Cup W union meeting where everyone's got pronouns in the bio, and this is just kind of usual par for the course. But Remembrance Day isn't about those people. At least it's not yet, until we declare all of them veterans all of a sudden when they do weekend training once a year. But we're now infesting even Remembrance Day with this stuff.
We have an ideology sweeping across this country in a culture where this people better start paying bloody attention to. That rock, for example, at UFC was a beautiful tradition. It was perfect. It was a democratic spot, and that was the place to have your passive-aggressive battle. Paint your little flag, the next group will paint it, the next group will paint it. But this group, the woke world, painted it green, white, and such.
And as a state.
Years ago. This was actually a couple of years ago when they did the occupation, their short-lived camp on the university. They painted that rock. And they basically let everybody there know it's sacred. You do not dare paint over it again. The tradition is finished. And today, finally, with a maple leaf, a flag being put on it, and allegedly that's controversial. The one place, I mean, I don't fault if somebody came tomorrow and painted the Palestinian flag. That's the place.
You're allowed to do it.
That's what it's supposed to be for. So they've said we can't do it at the place where we're supposed to do it. And then they're bringing their crap into the other areas where you weren't supposed to bring the politicization in, which is Remembrance Day. And I think part of why they're getting away with it, if they'd done it 20 years ago, when you're at a ceremony and there were still 100 or 200 actual veterans from World War II who could still get around without a walker and such, whoever was stating the land acknowledgements and saying everybody should look at their shoes and everybody should be ashamed of being Canadian would have been pelted by rocks from the veterans in the background and said, we're not going to put up with that crap on our day. But we need somebody to stand up and say, do not do that on their day. They're not here anymore. So those of us who didn't serve now got to get up and say that crap's got to end because it's degrading such a critical ceremony that just had none of that crap has any place going into it.
And on Remembrance Day, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was yesterday, Toronto Mayor Chairman Chow announced that they're going to be raising the flag at the Toronto City Hall. No, they didn't raise it on Remembrance Day. I think that might be a bridge too far, even for the nuttiest nuts so far. They were probably going to want to get there. But on Remembrance Day, she announced that they will be raising the Palestinian flag at the Toronto City Hall. We also just got word now the same thing is going to happen at Calgary. Calgary City Hall is going to raise the Palestinian flag. I mean, it's particularly provocative, but I think I want to pull it back, William, to maybe broader topic of corrupting our public spaces, institutions with things, ideological causes that have nothing to do with us. Palestine is a different people on a different continent that frankly should have nothing to do with us. They want to raise the Palestinian flag. Raise it in Palestine. Good for Palestine.
Or raise it at home or wherever.
Raise it on your private property. But then, I don't want to be accused of double standards here. So, I'd say we should also then not raise the Israeli flag at City Hall. What does City Hall have to do with Israel or Palestine? What does it have to do with your sexual orientation? We should be scrapping this. We've just got an endless now ream of applications in for declarative days. Today's Gay Day. Today's Palestine Day. Today's Israel Day. It's time we shut this shit down. It's time we just draw the line and say, City Hall can have 3 flags. Canada, Alberta, Calgary. That's it. Okay, fine. If we lose a bet, like say we lost the game to the Oilers, we have to raise, the Oilers flag. Okay, I guess we need a little bit of wiggle room. But I'd rather...
You can't give them an inch.
You know what? I'd rather there just be no wiggle room at all, rather than this constant pandering to every little group that claims grieved or victimhood status. Because many of them are generally fine causes that I don't, at least on the surface, have any problem with. But I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it, William, and I'm going to go crazy if I see one more friggin' flag that's not Canada, Alberta, or Calgary at my bloody City Hall.
No, I got you. I think maybe in the past, maybe there's a place for it upon the canvas of Canadian society, but that's really the thing. We need to reestablish Canada's identity. We need to really reestablish a canvas because it's being rent asunder. I think it's 43% of Canada's youth are actually in favor now of becoming part of the United States of America. And so that's essentially half of Canada's youth. Half of Canada's future is essentially, they see no future in Canada. They want to go to the States. And that's because in a lot of ways, we very much sacrificed our own spirit, values, ethos in order to make space for the culture and pride of others. I think in a lot of ways, the modern advent of identity politics has transformed the pursuit of diversity into an instrument of oppression and very much a political mechanism that leftists everywhere now routinely leverage in order to legitimize and very much encourage the persecution of any sufficiently undiverse or white person. And we see that in America. We see that in Canada. I think in a lot of ways, even the overt abuse of white people has become legitimized. Based on kind of this advent of identity politics. In a way, you have to even beg the ability to suffer, the ability to have a legitimate perspective now within your own nation.
All right. Well, this we're running slightly behind. Maybe I ranted too much, but it segues real nicely into our next topic here: bureaucrats at arms. So, Nigel, the federal budget. I was kind of pillaring this. The feds have this plan to increase our reserve forces to 400,000. We're at 25 to 26,000 right now, so 16-fold increase. There is a 0% chance. Like you would have to pay reservists $100,000 a year to go on a couple weekends to get up there without conscription. Just no way you're ever going to get even vaguely close to it. We've had a 30,000 target for 8 years now. We haven't closed it by one soldier, essentially. We've not gotten anywhere. Also, people come in, they realize how crappy it is in our forces now. You got tampons in the men's room. It's not yes, sir, ma'am. It's yes, they, them kind of crap. There's no esprit de corps anymore. Our military's been shredded from its martial spirit as esprit de corps. But their plan now is, at least for 300,000 of this massive new People's Army in Canada, is reclassifying bureaucrats.
So First of all, I want to point the listener to an excellent column in the Western Standard from John Thompson, who often writes on military matters, and he writes with some authority because he was in the forces himself. I must confess, when I read this, I didn't know whether we should be taking this seriously or whether we should play it for laughs, because the whole idea is outrageously stupid from the very start. But you never know with Mr. Carney whether even something ridiculous actually meets an undisclosed government motive. And I really have to think, well, he's made various promises about spending more money on the Canadian military. Well, here's a way to do it. That he's going to expand the forces. Well, if it's just numbers that you're thinking about, here's a way that you can fool people. But if we're going to go to the numbers game, let's just look at a couple of things here. There are approximately 400,000 Canadian civil servants, and there will still be 400,000 plus after Mr. Carney has completed his budget cuts. Of that number, 58% are women. That's not to say women can't be part-time soldiers, but the other thing is more than half are over the age of 40, and more than a third are over the age of 59. Now, basically, that's not your traditional recruiting pool, okay? And what do they get?
Old cat ladies working in offices.
They get 1 week's training. They get shown how to shoot a gun, to fly a drone, and this is obviously something that's going to have to be procured because we don't actually have a hell of a lot of these things. And I have to wonder what it is that Mr. Carney and those advising him are imagining. This is the sort of army that defends, well, you would understand this. This is the army that defends Berlin in March, April 1945.
Yeah, it's not the cream of your crop.
It is the army that Britain was.
Why do I understand that?
Well, the stereotypes.
That's racism. It's racist.
Right in your own shot, Derek. Anyway, so, this is the sort of army that Britain would put together. They called them the Home Guard. They had pitchforks, shovels, and one gun between three. And if the Jerry's had ever landed, they'd have had a rough time with it. But this kind of, these are not Minutemen. To use an American analogy, our civil servants are not the people you want if you have a citizen army. And they certainly aren't the people who are going to rise to the occasion with 1 week's training. So obviously this is a big rubbish story. I can't help thinking that this is all about giving the government cover to go back and say they've done something when in actual fact they've done nothing.
Funny historical just note there. One of the last organized divisions in Berlin, May 1945.
England.
No, it was a French SS division, Charlemagne. It was actually French. The French defended Berlin to the end, maybe not Paris.
Yeah.
But the French defended Berlin to the end.
Fun facts every show.
William, a year ago, the Liberals were saying we're going to confiscate all these military assault rifles from Canadian hunters, and we're going to give it to Ukraine.
That's my parting shot.
Oh, well, you didn't tell me. Yeah, but they were going to give these guns to Ukraine. Turned out Ukraine didn't want them because none of them are actually military rifles. They're just hunting and sport shooting rifles. So the Ukrainians disagreed that these are actually assault rifles. But this sounds just about as crazy that we're going to arm the Ukrainians with our hunting rifles. Now we're going to make a mass people's army out of bureaucrats.
Yeah,
you live with bureaucrats. How often do you think they are? You're in Ottawa.
Well, so here's the funny thing. I've been trying to turn this on its head to make sense of it. And I wonder if really the goal isn't necessarily physical, let's say, but ideological, kind of to reconstitute the ideology of the Canadian Armed Forces. I mean, we already know that they're doing everything they can not to recruit from people on the right, because the Canadian Armed Forces, like the RCMP, has equated traditional values squarely with extremism, right? And so what else would kind of swelling its ranks by so many public servants do, but essentially inject like a huge amount of, like you said yourself, hyper-leftist ideology directly into the ranks of the Canadian Armed Forces? And I wonder if maybe that's that's really the goal, not combat readiness, not the ability to do anything militarily to
Commissars.
reestablish our martial spirit, but to change the ideological constitution decisively of the Canadian Armed Forces. To me, that's really the only thing that makes sense. And in a way, it's almost the most nefarious of possibilities.
I think there's a good point to there. I think there is also Carney does need to be able to show Trump and to a lesser extent NATO more broadly that, hey, look, Canada's got this. We have an actual army now. So on paper, you could show that you've got more. I think that is one goal. But on the other, I think that is a not unreasonable suspicion that will these serve as ready-made commissars to ensure that the military is ideologically reliable. They've already done this at the upper end of the forces, Corey. You remember it was just it was like last week or something. The chief of defense staff, what's her nuts?
I'm kidding, no.
Yeah. She gave this weepy, teary apology for systemic discrimination in the forces. Oh, you know what? Yeah, like everything, it's not always had a perfect politically correct record, but for God's sakes, the purpose of the military was never inclusion and diversity. It was war fighting. That's what it does. It defends the country and it attacks others. It's pretty simple.
But those with a taste for adventure should tune in to Fox News tonight. They are going to have a riot with this.
Oh,
Are they
absolutely.
picking it up?
They're going to, Pete Hegseth will be there laughing at it.
Oh,
Trump will be laughing at
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Yeah,
see, this
like,
is what I was going to say. It makes us look worse to Trump. I think that, to be honest, like all this talk of a 51st state is squarely the result of our weak leadership. I think that, let's say you have Harper in there and Trump makes the same joke about a 51st state, and it stays just that because you had a strong leader in office. And so I think that in a weird way, like adding all these public servants, it makes us worse in the eyes of Trump. It makes us look even more limp-wristed, let's say, effete and almost incapable of anything internationally.
Yeah. Well, you know, this will make the lower ranks, more ideologically reliable, perhaps. But they've already done this with the upper ranks. Promotion now, I'm sure merit still plays some role in the forces, but it is very clearly not the most important thing. They're not putting a hoser like Randy Hillier from Newfoundland in anymore. That kind of guy is not gonna. We're not going to see him as chief of defense staff anytime soon. They've got these DEI hires who are clearly there just for photo op. It looks good on paper to these kinds of people. But yeah, I wrote a column we published just over the weekend. I was thinking. So the Royal Canadian Navy, Corey, tweeted that the HMCS Corner Brook was refitted and is back in service, and they said it is, quote, the most advanced submarine in the Canadian fleet. Now, my dream as a kid was to be in the Canadian Navy. I wanted to command a submarine, so I pay attention to this stuff. And I scratched my head and I thought, it's the most advanced submarine in the Canadian fleet. I'm pretty sure it's the only submarine in the Canadian fleet. I looked it up. Yes, it is. We have, on paper, 3 submarines built in the 80s, which have been out of service virtually the entire time since Canada bought them used. And these are diesel submarines. They've never really been in active service.
They killed a couple of sailors when they
caught
brought
fire.
them over.
Yeah. They've been getting refitted the entire time we've had them.
Yeah.
So we have 3 sitting around, 1 now, I guess, in service. And I thought, okay, I wonder how many admirals we've got for our submarines. And then I thought about this, and I started crunching the numbers. We have got 3 admirals. Okay, so we've got 145 flag officers. That's generals and admirals combined. There's different levels of generals and admirals. But we've got 445, excluding joint commands like chief of defense staff, people in NORAD, NATO, stuff like that. We have, so excluding a significant number of those generals and admirals in joint commands and organizations, we have 3 admirals per active duty or combat ready warship in Canada. 3 admirals. So like 1 admiral can literally run the engine room. I don't know what the captain does in the Navy anymore. We got 2 generals per combat ready tank. 1 can drive, 1 can man the gun. And we've got nearly 1 Air Force general per active fighter jet. Now, I know that's a very oversimplifying metric, but I think it should put things in perspective. that we don't have a Navy. We don't have an Army. We don't have an Air Force. We've got paper organizations that are just led by people in uniform who are no longer even led, at least at the high levels, based on anything involving a meritocracy. For all intents and purposes, Canada doesn't just have an underfunded, undermanned military. We don't have a military. We got 2 tanks per general.
Yeah, well, in this latest embarrassing
So 2 generals per tank.
embarrassing brainstorm, which people will see through immediately, and NATO and so on aren't going to say, "Oh, great, Canada's met its 2%." No, they have to keep them there. We don't need more body bags. I mean, we can't take these reservists and stick them in a real combat situation. It would be inhumane. I mean, I had the opportunity. I've just returned from a country actually with some of the most active reservists on earth, which is Israel. And you'd see them on the streets. You go to Tel Aviv at night and they're going to the nightclubs and you see a couple of good looking girls walk and you realize they have M4s hanging over their back. And you see off duty reservists.
Careful around them.
Oh, yeah. But you see off duty reservists and people around. They aren't fat, later middle aged, old bureaucrats or even old journalists like myself who'd be unfit for that duty. They're conscripts, but they're young because they really want them to serve a purpose. They're in shape. They've clearly been trained. That's why you can have them walking around in public with firearms. And because, unfortunately, because there's a very dire need for it over there. They're in the middle of a war. But, I mean, there's loads of examples around the world of how to put together functional reserves, functional militaries. The only reason the Carney government is doing this is that they don't want us to have one. It's as simple as that. If they wanted one, they'd have a model that would start, because they're not afraid to spend money. They want to keep it just a woke extension of the bureaucratic nightmare that we're already living in.
Well, and every single last one of the successful reserve army models in the world relies on young men of your biggest demographic in your nation. And did I not just describe the danger group? Young white men. That is enemy number 1 of the Canadian government. They're like, oh, they're radical, they're extreme. Well, you're making them radical real fast. You're making them extreme real fast by treating them like second-class citizens in their own country. But, I mean, you're not going to have a military of any kind, big, medium, small, effective or not, unless you've got young men who like guns and stuff. That's who wants to join up. And they don't want to join up at significant numbers right now because they're treated like crap.
Well, again, I mean, the example, if you want to see, of any specialized force or something that could garner respect, would be small and well-trained. The closest thing we got to Canada, and that is GTF-2. These are bearded, manly-looking, tough men, and I imagine if there was ever a recording of their, let's just call it locker room talk, they're not talking about shearing man-ponds. They are not politically correct. They are aware of their role.
They'd be fired in an instant, I'm sure, if we got a recording of what they say.
And that's the closest, we have to such. If we really want a functional force, you want to temper them down, fine, but expand that category. And they're not interested in doing that. As you said, that's the ones they want to sideline.
Yeah. All right.
It's like April the 1st, but
But for real.
This stuff should not be a joke. But, I mean, we've been a joke of a country with a joke of a military for generations now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I
All
think
right.
that's part of maybe the saddest part. Like, I mean, long before we were a peacekeeper and kind of seen as a steward for other nations, we were very much a peacemaker, and we were renowned as one of the international community's most spectacular merchants of violence. We have a storied history, not just of kind of helping people and keeping people safe, but very much advancing our own national interests and doing damage.
All right. I guess, okay. I won't get as worked up on the next topic. All right. Who wants Pierre gun? So there was Polo just the other day saying, just nearly half, I think it was like 47% or so, but, essentially half of right-leaning Canadians want new leadership for the Conservative Party. So Pierre Poilievre, I think, is it February it's coming up in the convention?
January.
They're having their biannual convention right here in Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, facing a leadership review, it's probably smart strategically to go to a friendly area. Each constituency is only allowed to send, a dozen or whatever it is, but an equal number of people. But you're going to get more from there when you have smaller travel costs, etc. So it's generally friendly turf. Calgary, pretty friendly for Poilievre, obviously. So he's got his leadership review coming up. I haven't seen any pundits predicting that he might lose. Leadership reviews in Canada are almost always a foregone conclusion. The only question is, how strong is the support? It is extremely rare for incumbent party leaders to come anywhere close to actually losing. In Canadian history, you can count them almost on one hand. The first leadership review, the whole process was created, I think, in the 60s to oust John Diefenbaker. He had overstayed his welcome as the leader of the party, and Don Camp and all that wanted him gone. So they created this process, and he lost. It was literally created to get rid of him. So, okay, John Diefenbaker lost. But, after that, the next one comes up is Joe Clark, who got like 66% or something. And he said, well, that's not strong enough. So he resigned and then ran again. Obviously did not win again to Brian Mulroney. That's kind of been the bar. You got to get over 66%, bare minimum, to stay on. I know, a lot of the media were saying, oh, is Danielle Smith going to win her leadership review? She got like 97 or something. She was in like North Korea territory strong. Thomas Mulcair lost. Normally when a leader is going to lose, they can read the room first and they say, all right, guys, and before you even get to the convention, they've got good feelers out there. You're not going to win. Jason Kenney did not read the room. After rescheduling it a bunch of times and rigging the rules, he got like 51%. Obviously couldn't stay, had to go, but he would have gotten much less if they had not rigged it. But normally a leader reads the room. Pierre Poilievre is going to win. The media are hedging their bets. Oh, it's going to be. I think he's going to get pretty strong. But William, I don't know. I know you just started, but we've kind of thrown you into the lion's den in the press gallery there. Who's taking this seriously? That Pierre Poilievre's leadership's actually in any jeopardy?
I think the media and liberal politicians are the ones who are really taking it seriously. I think they've essentially constructed this narrative, I think essentially post-election, that Pierre Poilievre is not doing too well. He's not enjoying support. The Conservative Party is kind of in decline. And I think that now certain Conservative politicians are becoming beholden to this narrative and kind of bullied into fulfilling its prophecies. I think as part of this greater attempted narrative push that we've all seen kind of over the past few years, this attempt to convince everyone that right-wing values, conservatism, religion even are all dying out. And it's simply not true. I think especially amongst Canada's youth, which is for all intents and purposes, Canada's future. Data indicates, for instance, that if the last election were to have been decided entirely by Canada's youth, we'd actually been blessed with a Conservative government. And I think that that's something we need to keep in mind, that conservatism is firmly on the upswing. It's strong. It's doing great in Canada, especially amongst the youth in our future. And I think that we risk almost, let's say, speaking something into existence that we don't want to do, right? And that's this narrative that conservatism is in decline. And we really need to be worried and careful of not speaking that into existence, because we're doing great right now. And I think that the only people who think we're doing badly, kind of Pierre Poilievre's leadership is suffering, are, again, the liberal media and liberal politicians. And I think they're the ones who have really constructed this narrative. To be honest, if there's any fracturing going on because of the budget, or let's say Poilievre's not Poilievre's leadership, but if there's any fracturing going on anywhere, we can look to the Liberal Party to take it in. Carney, very recently, I think he's actually been forced to keep his EV mandate to keep people like Gobo happy. And that one Liberal MP, Erskine Smith, I think it is openly and viciously criticized the Liberal and Carney budget, right? And so if we want to look for any real explicit signs of a party fracturing, we've got that all in the Liberal Party. And when we look to the Conservative Party, really the only signs of this fracture are kind of reports from the Liberal Party and their partisan media that we can't really give any real credence.
Well, I don't think the Conservatives are totally united. I think their voters, and especially the members, are broadly united behind Poilievre right now. I think the caucus may be a little less so. The caucus tends to be more upper crust. It's wealthier. They have more. Their personal
ambitions.
They have ambitions. Everyone wants to be a cabinet minister. They're now looking at likely 4 years in opposition. 4 years. And you don't even have a theoretical chance of being a cabinet minister unless you cross the floor. And in interpersonal, factional fighting, power. Nothing unites like power. Harper kept his guys together, but he was power. In opposition, he had a much, much harder time. You had Belinda Stronach famously cross the floor. Opposition, you just don't have as many carrots. and you just don't have as many sticks. So I'm not surprised to see some, we had the floor crossing there. Then you had Matt Genereux resign in very weird circumstances, and then has like a hostage video put out later, like, I swear to God, I was not thinking of joining the Liberals. I'm resigning, but not immediately. I'm doing it in a few months. Like, it was weird. It was a weird thing. I think I can't say for sure, but I smell something was there. What exactly? Can't say. But I think there is divisions in caucus, and from some of the provincial parties, particularly in the East, and in particular Doug Ford's government. They've scheduled their convention for the same day. I think that's because if it wasn't the same day, people would be expecting, if Doug Ford is this great political organizer and force, he should be able to knock Pierre Poilievre out by having his convention the same day. He can say, yeah, I'm busy, I don't care. I think that's where the division is. There's some, maybe not a ton, but some in the caucus, and certainly a lot on some of the provincial PC parties.
There really isn't a person that I can think of who would be a natural fit, or somebody who's in waiting, as it were, and that's part of Pierre Poilievre's success, is that he's managed to keep any possible rivals in the sort of the unknown
in the caucus. But there are two people already trying to fashion themselves: Doug Ford and I think Jason Kenney try to fashion themselves as successors.
Well,
one is loyal successor, one is disloyal successor.
I was going to bring up the matter of the Doug Ford having his convention on the same weekend. Obviously, I don't see that his people are doing anything at the moment. They're laying the seeds.
They all they can.
So I as for Mr. Kenney, well, and I can't see it. But anyway, that's just because I'm a little blind in one eye. The question on that poll is really should not have been, do you want a new leader? Because people will say yes. The question is, what would you want a new leader to do that's different to what the one you has done? Because Poilievre has actually accomplished a little miracle here in bringing the Conservative Party up to the point in January, February of this year, where it was the recognized option. And this is the thing we got to remember: a lot can happen in a short time. So right now he's on the outs, but he could be back in a flash with a change in circumstances that right now nobody's even prepared to contemplate.
I know what you're saying, but I that's kind of said every time a leadership comes up. People would say, but who could possibly succeed? People said the same thing when Kenney was going down. People said the same. Stockwell Day went down.
Well, and you said the same thing when the last time I brought this up. So I remember the occasion.
Yeah.
But
and people said the same thing when Trudeau was going down. Who could possibly succeed him? And I mean, from a liberal perspective, Carney's worked out pretty good. I mean, so this is kind of said every time. These are jobs that people want, and people come out of the woodwork for it.
I'll tell you what the problem is with Pierre, and it's with the Conservative Party. This is actually a media event, and the reason that the media are on it is the Conservatives do not talk to the media.
What Conservatives are you talking to?
You've got to feed the goat, and the media is a goat. And if you don't give them something to chew on, they will go somewhere else and get it. And what do? They go to the Liberals and the malcontents and the people who do polls. They are trying to get anything out of a Conservative MP. They've been told to shut up and not bugger about with the messaging.
All right, Cory, we don't have enough time for you here, but we don't have enough time overall, so I don't even get a parting shot. So you're just going to get the parting shot time, and you're up first.
I'll do a quick one. Just a gentle reminder to some folks that Grey Cup is this weekend, and I couldn't care less about the Canadian Football League.
You son of a bitch.
I know, but there were 9 big lines drawn in the sand by somebody in Alberta saying Grey Cup weekend was the deadline for all of those lines, and I don't see any of them having been released. Premier Smith has made it pretty clear that there was a whole bunch of demands she expected Carney to meet by then, and that deadline's fast approaching. I don't think a memorandum of understanding covers it. I really hope she's got something in mind for the or else part of her threats, because otherwise they're just hollow.
I think it's that's a good point. Nigel.
Well, you grab line about the stolen parting shot. Look, the one thing I would have mentioned is I see that under the new deal at Tesla, Mr. Mr. Musk is going to be the world's first trillionaire. I'm not jealous. Good luck to him. But it just goes to show what you can do when you give people what they want at a price they can afford.
Well, I don't want a Tesla, nor can I afford one. But I take your point. All right, William, final parting shot to you.
Maybe I'll touch on what we were talking a little bit earlier about anti-Palestinian racism. I think that one of the things we struggle with is kind of the difference between anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia, and the difference is actually something striking. Anti-Palestinian racism is predicated on this idea that you can't criticize the Palestinian cultural narrative, and that's simply anti-Canadian. It's against everything it means to be a democratic nation, and it's indicative of exactly the main problem with adopting anti-Palestinian racism as anything salient in Canadian society.
All right, that's it. Cory, Nigel, William, and John running the studio here. Thank you very much. And thank all of you for joining us today on The Pipeline. Remember, the Western Standard relies on people like you to keep doing what we're doing, providing an independent voice for the West in the media. Go to westernstandard.news right now. Click on subscribe. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year for unlimited access to all Western Standard content, getting past that pesky paywall. And you'll be doing God's work, supporting work like all the people we've got here in the Western Standard newsroom. Thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless.